Hello. Hello. Welcome to Largo First Church in Nazarene, to our online church again. We are hoping that this will be ending soon in our home, and we'll be back at our church, and Miss Kathy will have more to say about that. We're going to have a great service today. The Lord has given us a great word, worship. I want to just give you some progress announcements on what's going on with our renovation. Like I said, we met with the board, and as soon as we finish phase 1 of our renovation, we're good to go. And I wanted to show you a few pictures. Now, when the pictures go on the screen, I'll go silent, unfortunately, but hang in there. It's just a little slideshow of about 30 seconds. I want to show you the progress we made in the sanctuary. So I'm going to bring those pictures up for you right now, and you'll be able to see that. Well, there you go. It's been a good amount of work, and we appreciate the donations. Actually, the tiles, which are LED tiles, came from James from Pinella Storage, a friend of Steve's. We thank him. Thank you, James, if you can hear us. Jay Sloan he's come with his employees. He's in the painting business and renovation, and he came and he knocked out some work for us as well, and he's brought a lot of insulation for us. And so we want to thank him and Steve and Matthew and all those who have helped in the past week especially. So as you can see, the tiles are all down, the old installation is out, and the new tiles, lights are up. That's what that is. That's our full LED lighting. You see the sanctuary is well lit. And now we just have to run insulation, put the tiles back in, and we're hoping that we can get in there soon. We do have 3 phases. Our second phase is going to do with painting and stage lighting. Our third phase is going to do with installing a prayer labyrinth. And I'm going to have more to say about that. But a prayer labyrinth is a great way for the community to come and pray with us. It's that a lot of people are drawn to it. It's almost like a holy place that we can connect to the neighborhood with in a spiritual sense. So we appreciate if you continue to tithe. Those of you who are part of our church, Steve is going to put in here the website that you can send your tithes to, because you know it's been a few months, and some of you have been using the website. You can also mail your check to the Largo Nazarene Church, and that'll be there in the comment field as well. We appreciate you supporting. If you can if there's any special gifts to go with this renovation, we would appreciate it. We're looking at about $5,000 down the road. But phase 1, we've had a lot of donations, and we thank the Lord for that. Just wanted to update you on the work, and Ms. Kathy now has our announcements for today.
And I'm just going to add another little thank you, if you don't mind, to Isaiah and Joanna.
Yeah.
So I know that you hung out with this guy here this week,
yeah,
and helped him out a lot. So I want to thank you for that. Of course, Pastor has his Bible study this Wednesday at 10:30 on Zoom, and he's also going to start posting a lesson on Facebook. So that'll be another way that you can be a part of that. So that's going to be really great. So I think we're hoping and praying that maybe by Father's Day we might be able to be together. So
that's what we're shooting for.
We're shooting for that. So we'll keep you posted on that. I know of some anniversaries, so we're going to do a shout out. Eugene and Nicole, tomorrow is their 1-year anniversary.
Ooh, already,
so yes, on the comments, wish them happy anniversary. So that's exciting. And also on Thursday, this guy here, Pastor and I, it's our anniversary. So 37 years. So anyway, a lot of exciting things happening this week. So we just want to thank you for all being here. Remember to do comments, likes, loves, whatever. You know, it keeps us connected, and I love us talking to each other that way. I just think it's just really pretty neat. Yes, it really keeps us connected in more ways than you can imagine. So thank you so much, and we're going to have our worship time right now.
Amen.
To God be the glory, great things He hath done. So loved He the world that He gave us His Son, who yielded His life an atonement for sin, and opened the life gate that all may go in. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord, let the earth hear His voice. Praise the Lord, let the people rejoice. Oh, come to the Father through Jesus the Son, and give Him the glory, great things He has done. Oh, perfect redemption, the purchase of blood, to every believer, the promise of God, the vilest offender who truly believes, that moment from Jesus a pardon receives. Praise the Lord, let the earth hear His voice. Praise the Lord, let the people rejoice. Oh, come to the Father through Jesus the Son, and give Him the glory, great things He had done. Great things He had taught us, great things He has done, and great are rejoicing through Jesus the Son. But purer and higher and greater will be our wonder, our transport, when Jesus we see. Praise the Lord, let the earth hear His voice. Praise the Lord, let the people rejoice. Oh, come to the Father through Jesus the Son, and give Him the glory, great things He has done, and give Him the glory, great things He has done.
Amen. And purer and higher and greater will be that wonder, that transport, when Jesus we see. We're going to be transported to heaven. Isn't that amazing? On a heavenly transport. I'm sure it's going to be faster than the speed of sound. And it's going to be a wonderful time. We want to pray today, as before we go into the Word. We want to pray for our health, for our jobs, for our finances. We want to pray for our family, sisters, brothers, parents, grandchildren. We want to pray for our nation. We want to thank the Lord for the weakening of the virus. We want to thank the Lord for a rebound in employment and the economy, a hope of a great rebound in the economy. That's good for everyone. And we want to pray for unity. We know there's some issues going on in our society right now that are valid, and pray that God will give us the wisdom to bring unity. So all these things, for all these things, I want to read a Christian poem that was written in the 10th century as our prayer, and it's called Christ's Cross. Made a little modification to it for the 21st century, and calling it Christ's Cross for America. Christ's cross over this face, over my ear, Christ's cross over this eye, Christ's cross over this nose, Christ's cross to accompany me before, Christ's cross to accompany me behind, Christ's cross to meet every difficulty, both in pandemic and in civil unrest. Christ's cross eastward facing me, Christ's cross backwards toward the sunset, in the north and in the south, Christ's cross over America's health, Christ's cross over healthcare workers, Christ's cross over businesses, Christ's cross over economies. In other words, God's peace, Christ's love. Christ's cross over America's unity. To the whites, Christ's cross over prejudice. To the blacks, Christ's cross over forgiveness. To the whites, Christ's cross over empathy. To the blacks, Christ's cross over mercy. To the protested, Christ's cross over solidarity and understanding. To the protesters, Christ's cross over peace and nonviolence. To all Americans, Christ's cross over pain, Christ's cross over healing, Christ's cross over reconciliation, Christ's cross over love. Lord, have mercy. Hear our prayer. Amen. So many beautiful prayers that we've lost in the centuries, and this is one that was written in Ireland in the 10th century. And in the history, in the generations of St. Patrick, very devout believers, evangelists, lovers of Christ and nature, and we can learn a lot from them. Christ's Cross, the beautiful poem that was written then. We got Cat Stevens here today, so we got a little bit of traditional, we got a little bit of contemporary, and he's going to lead us off. It's about 2 minutes. Hang in there. I made it as short as possible. He's going to lead off the sermon because it's about what he's talking about, and so I'm just going to let him bring it on here. And here's the Cat from 1976 singing.
Oh, I've been crying lately, thinking about the world as it is. Why must we go on hating? Why can't we live in this? It's out on the edge of darkness.
I'm sorry, that was the wrong cat. He's the cat we're going to see at the end of the service, the older cat, and I gave him away. But let me go to the newer cat here. And here he comes.
We're going to do a song. I tell you, this song is really, it's basically, it's made me a lot of money. That's what it's basically done. No, apart from that, I wrote it while I was on a train. Oh, God. It's really true. And I was thinking of Alfred Hitchcock at the time and his lovely chin. And if everybody could, you know, love Alfred Hitchcock, I think it would be a better world, don't you? What? Now I've been happy lately, thinking about good things to come, and I believe it could be something good has begun. Now I've been smiling lately, dreaming about the world as one, and I believe it could be someday it's gonna come. 'Cause out on the edge of dark, there rides a peace train. Oh, peace train, take this country, come take me home again. Oh, peace train, take this country, come take me home again. Oh, peace train sounding loud, ride on the peace train. Come on, peace train. This peace train, holy road. Everyone, jump on the peace train. Come on, come on. Thank you. And good night. I love you. You've been beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Cat Stevens, and we'll see him in a little bit as I gave away the older version of him as we end. But can I talk to you today about peace? There are two kinds of peace that I want to talk to you about that the Bible deals with, and one is personal peace. You remember when I talked about Jesus healing the woman who was bleeding for 12 years, and I talked about how when she touched his garment, he said, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. So there's this personal peace of healing, and that was from Matthew 5:34. He granted her peace from her suffering, peace in his presence, and he forgave her sins. Your faith has saved you. This was the woman, the alabaster woman, the one that washed his feet in perfume. He said, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. And so she had peace from guilt, and she had peace of knowing Jesus. So Jesus qualifies as peace. He says, not as the world gives peace. My peace is 5-star. My peace is when you go on Amazon, it's 1 billion hits, and there are no 4-star reviews. It's all 5-star. It's the best peace. Like Donald Trump would say, it's the best, right? However he says it, everything's the best. Jesus gives personal peace, but he also grants interpersonal peace. That's the second kind of peace the Bible gives us. Peace between you and others. Interpersonal peace. So the first kind of interpersonal peace would be a compassionate peace, compassionate giving. Compassionate works. Psalm 105 talks about how God cares about, and he lists from verse 7 to 9, a litany of people that he cares about, who are misfortunate, oppressed, food to the hungry, set the prisoners free. He cares about the blind, those who are bowed down. He watches over the foreigner. He sustains the fatherless and the widow. People who are in unfortunate circumstances. He cares about them. And when Jesus was doing his work, he received the Spirit to do compassionate work. So we receive peace when we do compassionate work, because in Luke 4, he says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. Why? What was his mission? He has anointed me. Why? To proclaim good news to the poor, to give liberty to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, liberty to the oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. When we do compassionate things, we receive peace. That's the first kind of interpersonal peace. The Spirit accompanies compassionate work. When you receive peace, there are two types of interpersonal peace, though. There is the compassionate giving, and then there's the other interpersonal peace that I want to talk to you about today, which happens to be now the main point of the message today, is peace through reconciliation. Matthew 5:23 says, therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift in front of the altar, go and be reconciled to them, then come offer your gift. My mother was so much like Jesus. She wanted us all to get along. When she was gone, she wanted to make sure we weren't going to be feuding over money. Or she said there's so many families that when the parents pass, they're feuding and they break up, and she just did not want that for us. That was like her main passion. She just said, I want you all to get along, kind of what she used to say. And I think all moms have that same passion. They want their kids to get along. And it must come from Jesus, because he wanted his kids disciples. He wanted them to get along. When they were arguing about who's going to sit next to him in heaven, he squelched it. He says, none of you. It's not for me to do. And when he also said, and by the way, don't bother coming to the Father and praying if you got something against your brother. Go fix that first. Settling your issue before settling in the pew is what it was about for Jesus. I want you all to get along. He even gave a process for getting along called reconciliation. Reconciliation means mending relationships. If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault. Just between the two of you. Work it out. The Beatles said, we can work it out. That's what they're talking about. Reconciliation can only happen if you go to them. It takes two to tangle and to reconcile. I go on, if they listen to you, you have won them over, Jesus said, but if they will not listen to you, take one or two others, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. And if they still refuse, go to the church, and if they still refuse, then label them as a pagan and as a tax collector. But there was a process to go through. You don't just have a disagreement with someone and get mad and don't talk to them anymore for 20 years. It's not the way it works. Interpersonal peace was a priority for Jesus, and historically it was the practice of reconciliation that was part of the church. David Fleming, in What is Ignatian Spirituality, quotes, I quote, as mature followers of Christ, now listen to this, we become more aware of the ways in which we wrong God and the ways in which we wrong other people, and they wrong us. They wrong us, we wrong them. We become more eager to seek forgiveness of ourselves and to grant forgiveness of other people. Often people appreciate the sacrament of penance and reconciliation more after they have made some progress in the spiritual life, more after they have gained some maturity. People that are mature work out their differences. It takes a mature believer to not take your basketball and go home. It takes a mature believer to go and confront and say, you know what, this is kind of bothering me. You know what, half of the time you'll find out it wasn't even valid. Reconciliation is a sign of maturity for the believer. Giving the other party a chance to reconcile. Give peace a chance. Another Beatle quote, I can't help it, it's John Lennon. Too many times we get mad over things that are never even true. And I'm not going to go into things that I saw done to me. I'm sure I've done things to other people. But we've got to watch ourselves. We've got to work it out. Interpersonal peace through reconciliation. The second kind of peace, settling your difference. If unsettled, they become like financial debts, right? And they weigh on you like a financial debt, and you can't get it off your mind. Have you ever had an issue like that with someone, a family member or a friend, and you did something foolish, or you didn't realize it, or you should have realized it, and they're upset at you, and it just weighs on you, right? You ever have that happen to you? And then when it's cleared, when you work it out, it's like whew, you feel a release. You feel peace, interpersonal peace. That's what it's about. I want to talk to you about something very sensitive now, and I want you to bear with me. I'm coming from a biblical perspective. We're all suffering from racial tensions today. Our country needs peace. How do we find peace in our country? The same way we find it individually. Compassionate giving. You know, when Hurricane Katrina hit, Drew Brees, the guy that was the undercover boss that we showed a few weeks ago, he gave millions of dollars, I don't know what the sum was, to help rebuild New Orleans. He just gave $5 million to Louisiana to help in the pandemic. He's given money to areas that are very poor and very black, and they love him. And there's reconciliation. We saw in the video, they worship him. Not just because he won a Super Bowl, because he gave to that community and he rebuilt it. And so compassion can help to heal. Him and his wife just gave the $5 million. Sitting down and talking race relations might help, but helping in despair spoke a lot louder. Jack Brewer, he's black, an ex-Giant football player, entrepreneur, very successful. He says we don't have a race problem, we have a compassion problem. There are many types of people that need compassion, and we have a compassion problem. If we just follow Jesus' commandments, he said, to help the other, we wouldn't have this problem. The poor, those who are in need. This is the answer for peace in our society. Compassionate ministries like food kitchens, right? Rehab centers are sponsored by whites and blacks, 2 whites and blacks, to benefit them. And it brings peace, racial tensions. When we meet the needs of others, it goes a long way toward getting along. So, number 1, interpersonal peace through giving And here's the tough one. But here's the one that is exciting too, because it's something that can change us as a nation. International peace, interpersonal peace through reconciliation. How does reconciliation work? Well, Jesus said both parties in conflict have got to work it out, right? I'm not a sociologist. I'm a pastor. I know that racial reconciliation is a lot more complex than a rift between my friend or my family member. But the biblical principle is still the same. Reconciliation requires both parties to sit down and listen and talk. And maybe there might be some hurt initially, like when someone is hurt in your relationship and they need a little space. But eventually we have to sit down with cool heads and talk. So I'm going to let both sides talk today. I'm going to listen. You listen along with me. I'm going to let both sides talk. So I'm going to let the blacks talk first, and then the whites. And the blacks, what I hear them saying is, you don't know our history. And you know what? They're right. It seems we are embarrassed of our history. Thomas the Wolf. Thomas the Wolf. Not the wolf, but the wolf. He's a descendant of a slave trader. He said, slavery is a tragic accident in which people today are still bleeding to death. Remember, he's a descendant of someone that benefited from slave trading. Slavery is a living wound under a patchwork of scars. The only hope of healing is to be willing to break through the scars, to finally clean the wound properly and begin healing. May I just poke into the scars today, like a PG-13 version, nothing very tough, just to give us an idea. Okay, here we go. African slave trading. I don't know about you, but I didn't learn about it until I was older. Began in 1452. It had been going on for hundreds of years. It was the kind of thing where people drove up with boats filled with rum, and then people in Africa who were part of the accomplice of this would take the slaves and hand them over and trade them for the rum. They were kidnapped from the jungle. And if they survived this trek, sometimes 500 miles from the middle of Africa to the Cape, and wherever they were going on the ship, if they survived that, then they were packed like sardines into the ship, and it's estimated 10 to 15 million blacks died in transport. Thomas the Wolf, his descendant of the person that was involved in this, of a slave trader, he traveled to West Africa and Cuba, and he took 8 of his distant cousins with him for what? For reconciliation. And there were some people that didn't even want to see white people, but there were a lot that were willing to talk. To retrace the steps of his ancestors, to reconcile the blacks with blacks for his family's sins. There's nothing we can do to repay that, but we certainly can offer our apology and our sympathy. Slavery is on a certain level is taboo, he said. It is not a pleasant story, Thomas the Wolf says, and each time we tell it, people weep. If we tell it truly, people have to cry, but it's the only way to clean the wound. Trading ended in America and England by 1808. By then, the U.S. had 4 million slaves. President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, January 1st, 1863. The third year into the bloody Civil War. It cost Lincoln his life. It made slavery illegal in the United States, but lynching began in the South for 100 years. Things that most people, at least me from the North, were ignorant to. And the church setting is not fitting to discuss this, but Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement helped put an end to lynching besides bringing the civil rights. My trip to Whitney, I took a personal pilgrimage to the Whitney Plantation in Louisiana with my daughter Kayla, because I was so touched by what I was learning. It was, at that time in 2017, it was the only plantation in the United States yet to tell the true story of slavery. There's plenty of museums, but they're all whitewashed, pun intended. But I went there. My daughter went there with me, and I was struck by what I saw. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. But I want to tell black people, because I can hear them. I want to tell them that we hear you. We are sorry. We feel empathy for you. This is a sad thing for your history. Some people might say, but it's been hundreds of years. It's about time you get over it. I thought about that. It's like going to a woman that's lost a child. And from what I understand and what I experienced in observing, that women who lose children, on the anniversary, they go into a deep depression. It could be 50 years later. They're mourning over their child. Are you going to go to that woman and say, get over it, it's been 50 years. Why are you still mourning your child? Blacks, why are you still mourning your child? It's been 100 years, it's been 2 years. You can't do that. You've got to be empathetic. We can't fix it, but we can show our sympathy. You can't tell them to get over it. Okay, and both sides of the table are going to talk today. Okay, I'm starting with the blacks. I'm not in a position to mitigate what's going on, but I would say the majority of Americans want peace. From what people I know, we are very heartbroken about what happened with George Floyd. You're not going to find anyone in my circle that thought that's a good thing and intentional. We think it's intentional. And we stand with solidarity with you. We stand with any other injustices that maybe we can fix going forward. But reconciliation starts when we listen, we're apologetic. So again, I want to say we're sorry, and that's the position we need to take. We can't make up for it, but maybe will you accept our understanding? Now to my black brothers. Jesus' reconciliation requires two parties. I've got a lot of friends in church, and there's no issue with us, with the black. We love each other through the love of Christ. There's not a problem, but I'm speaking to the bigger population where it seems to be. Would you do your part and sit at the table? And even the people we do know, they still have that hurt. They just don't show it. They're graceful. Will you extend a hand of forgiveness? There are still inequities, we know, but as we grieve your painful past, we understand we as godly people are doing our best. And maybe as you come to the table, will you understand that opportunity for you has gotten better? Dr. Martin Luther King said, if we can't fly, then at least run. If we can't run, then walk. If we can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving. We have been moving in this racial problem. We have been moving. Would you take that as an understanding from your white brothers? We have been moving. We have been trying. Understand, we have moved forward. We have elected a black president, Barack Obama, elected by a white nation. We have been moving forward. Can you just take that as an understanding? We're doing the best we can. There's still inequities, we know that. And you know what, in 100 years from now, when our kids sit down, there's still going to be more. We'll never get it perfect, but we're doing our best. Can you understand that? That's going to help bring peace. I'm confident we'll make things right, but it won't be perfect. And one more thing, can we protest peacefully? Reconciliation happens when we're civil. Dr. Alveda King, the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King, said protest is required. She's for protest. She knows we need it. But it must be peaceful and prayerful. And here's a story you need to hear from her. Her father, brother of Dr. Martin Luther King, said this. She says, I'm reminded of my father, the Reverend Alfred Daniel Williams King, standing on a car in 1963 after our home in Birmingham, Alabama was burned and firebombed. She recalled, and Dad stood on the car and he said, if you must hit someone, hit me. But I would rather you go home and pray. My family and I are fine. Go home and pray. Ultimate peace must include God and reconciliation. Go home and pray. Black, white, we need to pray. That's where the basis of it all is going to happen. Floyd's brother, Terrence, he said protest is necessary. It's required at this time, but it must be peaceful. It must be prayerful. Go home and pray. Let's put Jesus in our hearts. That'll give us reconciliation. Ultimately, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, in spite of temporary victories, violence never brings permanent peace. Let's follow his lead. We both have a responsibility in this talk. We both need to come to the table. And we understand the hurt and the pain. But would you please come to the table? Let's talk. Let's open the wounds. Let's be forgiving. Let's seek progress, not perfection. Let's pray for racial peace. Second, as I close the sermon, peace comes from compassion toward others. And the first thing we talked about, and the most important thing, only Jesus, the Prince of Peace, can bring peace. I feel that peace in my heart. I hope you know Jesus in your heart. That is the only peace. The only source of peace is Jesus. So make sure he's in your heart. Let that cross be over you, as we read in that poem. And in fact, I'm going to end with just a few lines from that poem before we bring in Cat, the old Cat. Christ's cross over America, that section, was rewritten from Ireland in the 10th century to America in the 21st century. Christ's cross over America's unity. To the whites, Christ's cross over prejudice. To the blacks, Christ's cross over forgiveness. To the whites, Christ's cross over empathy. To the blacks, Christ's cross over mercy. To the protested, Christ's cross over solidarity and understanding. To the protesters, Christ's cross over peace and nonviolence. To all Americans, Christ's cross over pain, Christ's cross over healing, Christ's cross over reconciliation, Christ's cross over love, Christ's cross over brotherly and sisterly love. That's part one of our benediction. Part two now. I have a 1-minute version, maybe a little more, of the old Cat singing Peace Train, receiving, deservedly receiving the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Award. And he sings in his own ceremony, Peace Train. And let this interracial image that you see in this video be a symbol of reconciliation for our nation. Thank you for joining us. God bless.
Now I've been crying lately, thinking about the world as it is. Why must we go on hating? Why can't we live in this? It's out on the edge of darkness. There rides a peace train. Oh, peace train, take this country. Come take me home again. Oh, peace train sounding now. Ride on the peace train. Come on, peace train. Peace train, holy road. Everyone jump upon the peace train. Come on, come on, come on. Let's come on, peace train. This is the peace train. Come on, peace train. Peace train. Thank you, and God bless. Peace. Keep the